used to have an All-American camp that I used to go to, and at the time when I first showed, I was a sophomore, and one of the things I would do is while everybody would be at the cafeteria, eating and doing all sort of stuff, I just go back to the gym. But you're not going to outwork me.
Wow.
And I'm mentally going to.
Did someone teach you that?
With that, but I've worked extremely hard this summer to be able to play at a high level, regardless of the minute. Right? If it's 30, if it's 48, I'm prepared to do whatever's necessary, and that's my job to do so.
No, I don't mind working out 2-3 times. So it's just a blessing for me. And it's not like it was like, yeah, it was kind of a choice and discipline, but like I had really good discipline, but I was born that way. So it's like I can't take credit for that.
So you think you have to have it in you. You don't think you can just turn it on. Because see, I've been knowing you for a long time. I never known that. I just thought that you got pissed and you just turned it up.
Yeah, I think it was always in there. And then I used, over time, I think you can improve it. I think a lot of things, if you put a lot of time and effort in, you can improve 10 to 20%. I don't think you can improve 50%. Like, I don't think you can be, like, if you're a good shooter,
right?
Can you get better? Absolutely. If you're a bad shooter, can you become a great shooter? No.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to Lion's Heart. And in this video, I'm going to be discussing a very important topic, a very foundational topic to our work here, which is this idea of talent, right? And I think as humans across the board of time, we have always really pointed to talent or God-given gifts or destiny to other human beings that we see excel and pursue mastery in fields that we deem important, basically forever, since human beings have been around. And obviously this dates to our times now with things like basketball and music and sports and, the Olympics. And we just see these people who, like the Michael Jordans, the Tiger Woods, Usain Bolts, like these guys who, they almost seem like freaks. Like, how are they so good? How do they get that level of precision and mastery and talent and skill? And I think also in times past, we've looked at, for example, Achilles or certain hunters, maybe in hunter-gatherer societies, like certain hunters who just had this really evolved level of skill, right? And they were just like, they just really stood out, right? Like Achilles was, if he was real, was winning wars for the whole army, right? And maybe Schmorborg, in a certain tribe, a guy named Schmorborg was just this incredible hunter who every time they went out was, catching the biggest game and was just like unstoppable and was just like a great hunter, right? And so I think this is actually almost like an ancient question for human beings of nature versus nurture, or talent versus hard work, or skill versus destiny, right? And I think that if we contemplate this idea, I think a lot of people actually like the idea of talent and God-given gifts. Because why? Because it makes us feel better, right? It makes us feel like, oh, well, I don't need to pursue the NBA because I wasn't given the same genes as Michael Jordan. Or I don't need to, I can't pursue math and science because I don't have the same, smarts as Albert Einstein, right? Or I wasn't a born child prodigy, so I shouldn't pursue music at the level of a Mozart, right? Or that level of creativity. And I think this is a greatly limiting belief. I think this limits you, and it diminishes you, and it makes you small, and it makes you feel almost like it's in the hands of destiny, right? Like you can't do anything about it, that you can't pursue master, that you can't become a master in whatever field or domain you choose because I don't have those genes, I don't have that talent, I'm not a prodigy, it's not up to me, right? And I think this is very problematic and very limiting because one, it's not true, right? And I think it's so easy for us to jump to that conclusion of talent. But what I've actually discovered, and I'd largely like to thank the book Talent is Overrated. This book blew my mind because I was also in the field of, looking at a Michael Jordan or looking at a Tom Brady and going straight to the conclusion of they're gifted, right? It's in their genes. And what this book does through a lot of research and a lot of data and a lot of studies, and I highly recommend you check it out because you can go into detail in the studies and double check them and fact check them. And I was I was double checking and fact checking everything because my mind was completely blown. But basically, the one takeaway of this book is that actually talent can't be really found anywhere. Talent, maybe there's a small component of this thing called talent, but it's not nearly as significant of something that we attribute it to, right? It's not really that much of a factor, right? And there's people who have been deemed as talented as like a child prodigy or like in high school or something, and then they go on to not really do that well. They don't really get that far. And there's also been people who, like Michael Jordan, for example, who was he had a teammate in high school named Leroy Smith, and Leroy Smith was put on varsity and Michael Jordan was put on JV, right? So he wasn't even seen in high school as that much of a standout guy. And we're talking about Michael Jordan here, right? The GOAT of basketball. And so what happened was he basically outworked, and he worked smarter, and he became really intelligent about how he was practicing. That led him to, within the next decade or so, to become Michael Jordan, right? So, and this guy, his opponent, who was deemed more talented than him at the time, Leroy Smith, didn't even make it to the NBA, right? So I think this is a very important idea that we can't just outsource our lack of mastery and our lack of greatness to this kind of victim mentality, this kind of hopeless mentality of, well, I just don't have it. I just wasn't born with it, right? It's not in my genes. I think that we're all born as the same, and really this book proved it for me, but we're all born with the same blueprint, right? It's like a batch of cookies. We're all born with the same like evolutionary, biological, psychological minds, and obviously the bodies are different, right? So let's not discount that, right? Like someone born more large is probably going to be a better linebacker than a jockey racing horses, right? Like we have to acknowledge that. But for the most part, besides that, through the proper amount of training and deliberate practice, this thing of talent can be, let's just call it talent, but that can be trained and learned and mastered by anybody, right? So anybody can become world-class talent, right? It is not something anyone is born with, right? And there's an experiment in the book that I really love. Actually, this isn't in the book. I found this one separate from the book, but it's the Polgar sisters, right? So there's this guy, Laszlo Polgar, who is a Hungarian teacher, and he really loved this idea of talent doesn't exist, right? Like anyone can be born and trained and learn to be great in their field. They can learn to become a master in their field. They can learn to become a genius in their field, right? So what did he do? He had 3 daughters, and this was his goal with his daughters. Like this was like his life purpose, was to train his daughters to become world-class chess champions, right? And he chose chess because it's a very objective thing, right? There's a scoreboard and it's ranked on your level of play. It's not something that's subjective like music or art. So he chose chess as their domain of mastery. And he trained them from a very young age. He made them enjoy the training. And he did this type of deliberate practice, this deliberate conscious practice, right? And what happened was his 3 daughters went on to become 3 of the best chess players in the world, one of them becoming the best female player in the world, right? And I think to me, this is just like, they became grandmasters in chess, right? So I think to me, this is just like, it's such a good experiment because it really puts the nail in the coffin, because there was no genetic disposition there. He wasn't like a chess master. He chose that as the field because it's an objective measurement system, right? So I think to me, this is just such a good example. Another example is the West Berlin Music Academy, where they had 3 groups of students, right? They had 3 groups of musician students. And the lowest group was the teacher's group, the middle group was the good group, and the top group were the stars, right? And they basically broke them down into these 3 groups. And they found that the teachers really only did deliberate practice for about 4,000 hours over their lifetime. The good group did about 6,000 to 8,000 hours of deliberate practice. And the stars did 10,000 plus hours of deliberate practice, right? And they asked these students tons of questions, tons of research. And they found that the only really differentiating factor between these groups was how many hours they spent in this deliberate conscious practice, right? And for them, it was solo violinists playing the violin solo, which for many violinists is the hardest thing to do, right? It's the toughest type of practice. So what to me is so inspiring about this is that it's like we want to point to, what does all of this research mean? It's like we want to point to genetics. We want to make ourselves feel better for not being great because of laziness, right? This is what it really comes down to. It's laziness. And as I said earlier, it's not just hours clocked in. It's the type of practice you're doing. Are you doing deliberate conscious practice? Are you improving your skill, right? Are you working with a coach? Are you getting feedback? Are you doing the boring, hard, arduous work, right? It's like the 80-20 principle. Like, and for someone who's into meditation and consciousness like me, that's contemplation. That's sitting and meditating. It's not reading books. It's not watching YouTube videos. It's not going and doing ecstatic dance. It's not taking psychedelics. It is sitting and becoming directly conscious of the questions that I'm interested in, right? And I think that even for meditation and consciousness, like you look at guys like Yogananda, Ramana Maharshi, Peter Ralston, Ken Wilber, like these guys all worked very hard and they did the right types of conscious practice. They stayed in the right environments. They had great teachers, right? They did a lot of work. Like Ramana Maharshi, he spent 15 years in a cave after his awakening, deepening in that realization. Yogananda was working constantly and he was working consciously. So I don't think it's as simple as these spiritual masters just have a good karma. They just got like, this is their karma. They spent their past lives as a monk or something, which a lot of people, again, it's this offloading, right? It's this offloading of your own responsibility, your own possibilities, keeping yourself small because it feels better. But when you know that there's no excuse, when you know that there's no reason that you actually can't become a master, you can't become great, it just comes down to, you know, how you're working and if you're getting the right training and you're putting really your whole energy and time into this, that is the difference between you becoming great and you becoming amateur, right? So what I really love about this book and what I really love about this topic is that it's so empowering, actually, and it's so fair, right? Because Michael Jordan, he, you know, like people want to just say, well, you're discrediting his talent. You're discrediting Tiger Woods' talent. And I'm not, actually. What I'm saying is like it's more inspiring than that, actually. Like they worked for that. They actually worked for that. They had no talent. They worked really hard. They did the right type of practice and they got to that level of mastery. So it's even more impressive, actually, that they got to those levels. And just to put the nail in the coffin here, I think that people will obviously say, well, what about like the Mozarts and the Tiger Woods, right? You know, Tiger Woods was seen on live television at age 2 swinging a golf club. Mozart was like 5 when he was playing concerts and performances for like European royalty. Mozart wrote his first masterpiece at age 21. Tiger Woods was like a world champion, worldly recognized champion at age 18. So you might say, all right, what about this? Like, what about these guys? And again, actually, if you look at their lives, by the time Tiger Woods was 21, he had 20 and a half years of golf practice in his life, maybe 4 or 5 hours a day for 20 plus years. That's well over 20,000 hours, right? And it's the same for Mozart. And both of these guys actually had fathers who, kind of like the Polgar sisters, they had fathers who were dead set on their children becoming masters in those domains. Tiger Woods' father was retired military, and he basically just dedicated his life and his time to training Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods was actually in a high chair at 6 months old, watching his dad doing golf swings over and over and over. So this type of practice was embedded in his mind from a very young age. By the time Tiger Woods was like 6 or 8, he had like 7 years of practice over his colleagues, right, over his peers. And the same for Mozart. Mozart's father wrote a book on how to train children to become musicians, right? So he was no amateur. If anything, looking at the parents of people who go on and attain mastery and greatness is very important, especially these child prodigies, right? So even then, as much as the mind wants to go to that kind of explanation of child prodigy, how can you deny that? They were so born for that. if you really look at the numbers, you look at the data, they were doing the right type of practice over the right amount of time, right? And it doesn't come down to intelligence either, because there's way too many case studies of intelligent people who had a high IQ going on in life and doing something that was, kind of normal, maybe a little bit above average, lawyers, doctors, things like that. And then people in their same age group, in their same environment, who went on to become Nobel Peace Prize winners, right? So I'll put that study in the link below. I'll also link the book. I really highly recommend reading the book because the gravity of this is so profound, right? It's a very important foundational concept to understand, right? And I think that if more humans understood this, there would be so many more masters and people who attain greatness in their field, right? Because then what it really comes down to is putting in the work, the dedication, the time, and doing the right type of practice, right? So with that, I'll head out, and sounds like they're starting construction, part of living in a village in Mexico. But with that, I'll head out, and hope this message helps. Lots of love, guys. Cheers.